Princess stood in the grand medical chamber, her crystalline skin dimly glowing in the soft light. Around her, 7 of the Empire's finest doctors whispered among themselves. She already knew what they would say. She had known for months. "Your Highness," the head physician finally spoke, his voice heavy with regret. "We have examined every possibility. Your genetic structure is unique but unfortunately incompatible with any male. Natural conception is impossible." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. For the people, bloodlines meant everything. The royal family had ruled for 10,000 years, their light passing from parent to child in an unbroken chain. Now that chain would end with her. "How long do I have to decide?" asked, keeping her voice steady. "The Council of Radiance expects your answer within 3 months. If you cannot produce an heir, you must step aside for your brother." Nodded slowly. She had prepared for this moment, but it still felt like her heart was breaking. She dismissed the doctors and walked alone through the crystal corridors of the palace. Outside the tall windows, her world sparkled like a jewel. Cities of light stretched across the landscape, beautiful and ancient. All of it should have been hers to protect and guide. Now it would belong to someone else. She found herself in the garden where she had played as a child. The memory flowers still bloomed there, each one holding captured moments of joy from centuries past. She touched one gently, and it showed her a vision of her mother, who had died when was young. The image smiled at her with such love that tears formed in its eyes. "I'm sorry, Mother," she whispered. "I've failed you." Meanwhile, halfway across the galaxy, Captain Park was having a very different kind of bad day. His ship had just entered space, and nothing was going according to plan. "Sir, they're demanding we stop for inspection again," his second officer reported. "That's the 3rd time this hour." Rubbed his temples. This diplomatic mission was supposed to be simple. Earth needed better trade agreements with the Empire. Instead, they were being treated like suspicious criminals. "Let them inspect," he said tiredly. "We have nothing to hide." Beside him, Doctor looked up from her data pad. "They're just nervous. Humans are still new to them. We've only been in the Galactic Alliance for 15 years. 15 years should be long enough to stop treating us like children," muttered. Smiled. She had known since university, back when he was a scared kid from Seoul trying to make something of himself. He had come a long way since then, but he still got grumpy when people looked down on humans. "Be patient," she advised. "This mission is important. If we can make a good impression on the other species, will start taking us seriously too." The inspection finally cleared them, and their small diplomatic ship approached the capital. Even, who had seen many alien worlds, had to admit it was stunning. The entire planet seemed to glow from within, like a lamp made of precious stones. They landed at the royal spaceport, where a delegation of officials waited. The aliens were tall and elegant, their skin shimmering with internal light. They moved gracefully, making feel clumsy in his formal uniform. "Welcome to," the lead official said. His translator device made his musical language into flat English words. "The Emperor requests your presence at a formal dinner tonight." Bowed, trying to remember all the cultural protocols he had studied. "We are honored by the invitation." That evening found himself in the most elaborate dining hall he had ever seen. Everything was made of living crystal that changed colors with the light. Hundreds of nobles sat at long tables, and at the head of it all was the emperor himself, ancient and powerful. Next to the emperor sat Princess. Had seen pictures of her during his research, but they hadn't prepared him for meeting her in person. She was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with human standards. Her presence commanded attention, yet there was a sadness in her eyes that the formal smile couldn't hide. The dinner was a complicated affair with dozens of courses and strict rules about who could speak when. Did his best not to embarrass Earth, but he felt out of place among such refined people. Then disaster struck in the smallest way. A server carrying a crystal pitcher stumbled. reached out to steady the worker, and the sharp crystal edge cut her hand. Blue light leaked from the wound instead of blood. Instantly, servants rushed forward but was closer. The doctor's instincts took over. She pulled out her medical kit and began treating the princess before anyone could stop her. "I'm so sorry, Your Highness," said quickly. "I didn't mean to overstep, I just—" "It's fine," said surprised. "Thank you." The wound was minor, and quick bandaging stopped the light from flowing out. But protocol required that collect a small sample for testing, to make sure the princess wasn't having an allergic reaction to the human medical supplies. Later that night, back in their quarters, was analyzing the sample when she froze. She called out, "You need to see this." He came over, still half asleep. "What is it?" Pointed at her screen, where complex genetic models swirled. "I was just running a basic compatibility test between the princess's biology and our medical supplies. But look at this. Look at what happens when I model human DNA against hers." Looked at the screen, not understanding. "I'm a soldier, not a scientist. What am I looking at?" A miracle, breathed. "Human DNA is compatible with hers. Not just compatible, perfectly matched. I've never seen anything like this. So, we can donate blood to her or something." "No, you don't understand." Turned to face him, her eyes wide. "I heard rumors about the princess. They say she can't have children with her own people because of a genetic condition. But this, she could have children with a human." The words didn't make sense at first. Then they did, and sat down heavily. "That's impossible," he said. "I thought so too, but the data doesn't lie. Somehow, human genetic diversity acts like a universal bridge. We can adapt to almost anything because we had to survive Earth. And that adaptation—" She trailed off, looking at the data again. "We need to report this," said slowly. "To who? This is medical information about a princess. We can't just—" But it was already too late. To them, all foreign communications in the palace were monitored. Within an hour, news of the discovery had reached the Emperor's council. By morning, it would change everything. Woke up to someone pounding on his door. He stumbled out of bed, still groggy, and found Commander Song standing in the hallway with a grim expression. "We have a problem," she said, pushing past him into the room. "A very big problem." "What time is it?" asked. 6 in the morning, and every news channel in the Empire is talking about us." Turned on the wall screen. Immediately, images of and princess appeared, along with scrolling text in script that the translator couldn't keep up with. "What are they saying?" asked, his stomach sinking. "That humans might be able to solve the princess's medical condition. That Earth sent you here specifically to infiltrate the royal family. That this is all a conspiracy." Switched channels. "The conservative factions are calling for our immediate expulsion. The progressive ones are demanding answers, and the Emperor wants to see you in 1 hour." Sat down, his mind racing. How did this leak? Palace security monitors all foreign communications. When ran that analysis, they were watching. The expression softened slightly. "This is serious. What exactly did discover?" He explained what the doctor had found. Listened quietly, her face unreadable. "So it's true," she finally said. "Humans are genetically compatible with the princess." "It seems that way." "Then Earth Command needs to know. This could change everything about how the galaxy sees us." Pulled out her communication device. "I'm sending a report home. You go meet with the Emperor, and be very careful what you promise." The Emperor's private audience chamber was smaller than expected, but somehow more intimidating. The walls pulsed with soft light, and the Emperor himself sat on a simple chair rather than a throne. Princess stood beside him, her face carefully neutral. "Captain Park," the Emperor said, "thank you for coming on such short notice. I believe we have much to discuss." "Bode, Your Majesty, I apologize for any confusion. Doctor's discovery was accidental. We meant no disrespect." "I know," the Emperor said. My intelligence confirmed that your communications were purely scientific in nature. However, the discovery itself presents us with an unprecedented situation." He paused and could see the weight of centuries in his eyes. "My daughter cannot have children with our people. This is not just a personal tragedy. It threatens the stability of our entire empire. Our people need to know their rulers carry the ancient bloodline." Spoke for the first time. "Father, perhaps we should—" "Let me finish, daughter." The Emperor's tone was gentle but firm. He turned back to, "Captain Park, I am going to ask you something that may seem strange. Would you consider a marriage alliance with my daughter?" The room seemed to tilt, opened his mouth, closed it, and tried again. "Your Majesty, I don't know what to say." "You may say no, of course. We would not force this upon you, but I ask you to consider it carefully. Such a union would benefit both our peoples. They would have their heir, and humanity would gain a permanent position of respect in the galactic community." Looked at, she met his eyes, and he saw pride there, and embarrassment, and something that might have been hope. "May I have time to think about it?" asked. "Of course, take 3 days. We will reconvene then." The next 3 days were the strangest of his life. He couldn't go anywhere without being followed by reporters and curious citizens. Messages flooded in from Earth, some supporting the idea, others calling it exploitation. His own family had opinions, all different. But what surprised him most were his conversations with. It started the second day, when she invited him to walk in the palace gardens. Away from the cameras and politicians, she was different, less formal, more real. "I know this is awkward," she said as they walked among the memory flowers. "You don't know me. I don't know you. They're asking us to consider binding our lives together for political reasons." "It does feel strange," admitted. "I want you to know that I won't blame you if you refuse. This isn't your burden to carry." Touched one of the flowers, and it bloomed with a memory of her as a child, laughing. "I've spent my whole life preparing to be empress. I thought I had accepted that it wouldn't happen. But then your doctor made that discovery, and suddenly there was hope again. Hope is a dangerous thing." "Why dangerous?" asked. "Because it hurts more when you lose it the second time." They talked for hours that day. Told him about the pressure of being royalty, about losing her mother young, about the loneliness of her position. Talked about growing up poor in soul, about joining the military to escape poverty, about the strange feeling of representing all of humanity. "We're both trapped by duty," observed. "You didn't choose to be Earth's symbol any more than I chose to be born royal." "No," agreed, "but maybe we can choose what we do with it." Over the next 2 days, they met several more times. Sometimes they talked about serious things. Other times, taught her Korean words, and she showed him how communicated through light patterns. He learned that she loved ancient poetry. She discovered he had a dry sense of humor that made her laugh. On the third day, made his decision. He met with the Emperor and in the same audience chamber. This time, and were also present, along with several officials. "Your Majesty," began, "I have thought carefully about your proposal. I have one question before I answer. If I agree to this marriage, will it be treated as a real marriage? Not just a political arrangement, but a genuine partnership?" The Emperor looked surprised. "I would expect nothing less." "Then I have a condition. If Princess and I marry, the ceremony must include both and human traditions. Our cultures must be treated as equals." A murmur went through the officials. One of them, a stern-looking man named High Chancellor, stepped forward. "This is unacceptable. Our royal ceremonies have been performed the same way for 10,000 years. We cannot change them for—" "For what?" interrupted, her voice cold. "For a human. If Captain Park is good enough to save our bloodline, his culture is good enough to be honored in our ceremonies." Slight flickered with anger, but he said nothing more. The Emperor studied for a long moment. Then he smiled. "Your condition is accepted, Captain Park. Is that your answer, then? Will you marry my daughter?" Looked at. She was watching him intently, and he could see the hope she had called dangerous shining in her eyes. He thought about duty and choice, about loneliness and connection, about the scared kid from Seoul who never imagined he would stand in an alien palace making decisions that would affect billions of lives. "Yes," he said, "I will." Slight brightened just for a moment before she controlled it, but saw it, and something warm stirred in his chest. "Then it is settled," the emperor declared. "Let the preparations begin." The wedding preparations took 2 months, and every day brought new challenges. Had to learn customs while studied Korean traditions. They practiced the dual ceremony until they could perform both parts perfectly. Through it all, they spent more and more time together. "This part makes no sense," complained one evening, studying a description of the Korean ceremony. "Why do the bride and groom throw dates and chestnuts?" "It's about fertility and future children," explained. "The dates represent sons, the chestnuts represent daughters." "Ah," set down the document. "I suppose that's appropriate, given why we're doing all this." There was an awkward silence. Despite their growing friendship, they hadn't talked much about the actual purpose of their marriage. Said carefully, "Are you afraid?" "Of what?" "Of this not working, of the genetics being wrong, of disappointing everyone." She was quiet for a moment. "Every day, are you?" "Terrified," he admitted. "I keep thinking about how many people are depending on us. What if we fail?" Reached over and took his hand. It was the first time they had touched beyond formal greetings. Her skin was warm, and he could feel a faint vibration like electricity. "Then we fail together," she said softly. "At least we won't be alone." The wedding day arrived with more ceremony than thought possible. Representatives from every major species in the Galactic Alliance attended. News crews broadcast to billions of viewers across hundreds of worlds. The pressure was immense. The ceremony began with traditions. Wore a gown made of living light that shifted and flowed around her. Stood beside her in formal robes, feeling out of place but trying his best. They performed the ancient rituals, the joining of lights, the exchange of crystal tokens, the vows spoken in the musical language that had practiced for weeks. Then came the Korean traditions, changed into a handbag that's mother had sent from Earth. It was beautiful, red and gold, and wore it with such grace that whispers of appreciation rippled through the crowd. They bowed to the heavens and earth, then to parents who had traveled across the galaxy to attend. The symbolism was clear. Human culture was being honored equally. High Chancellor watched it all with barely concealed disgust. The reception was grand, held in the palace's largest hall. Thousands of guests celebrated while and sat at the head table, playing their roles as newlyweds. But noticed security was unusually tight, had insisted on positioning human guards throughout the hall. "Something feels wrong," she had told him that morning. "Trust me." Halfway through the reception, her instincts proved right. A group of servers moved toward the head table, carrying what looked like ceremonial wine, but noticed their movements were too synchronized, too purposeful. She shouted a warning just as they dropped their trays and pulled out weapons. "Death to the bloodline traitors," one of them screamed. Everything happened in seconds. The attackers rushed toward, security tried to respond, but they were too far away. Didn't think, he just moved. His military training took over. He grabbed and pulled her behind him, taking a blast meant for her. The energy weapon hit him in the shoulder, spinning him around. More security arrived. The attackers were subdued, but was on the ground, his formal robes burned and smoking. The wound was bad, leaking blood that looked wrong under the lights. Dropped beside him, her hands hovering over the injury. "No, no, no, someone help him." "I'm okay," gasped, though he clearly wasn't. The pain was incredible. "You're not okay, you're dying." Tears streamed down his face and her light flickered wildly. "You saved me. Why would you do that?" "Because I care about you," he managed to say. Something changed in his expression. Without hesitation, she placed her hands directly on his wound. Her light flowed into him, brighter than had ever seen. The crowd gasped. What was doing was dangerous, using her own life force to heal him. "Your Highness, stop," one of the doctors shouted. "You'll hurt yourself." But didn't stop. The light poured from her and he felt warmth spreading through his body. The pain lessened. His breathing came easier. When she finally pulled away, exhausted and pale, the wound was closed. Sat up slowly, staring at her. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did." His voice was weak but certain. "I care about you too." The next few days were chaotic. The attackers were revealed to be extremists who believed the marriage was an insult to purity. Investigations began. Security increased, but Anne barely noticed. They were too focused on each other. Healing had created a bond between them, something neither fully understood. They could feel each other's emotions now, faint but present. And with that bond came a deepening of feelings that had been growing since they first met. 2 weeks after the attack, they were alone in their shared quarters for the first time. The formality between them had disappeared. Now they talked freely, laughed together, shared their fears and hopes. "I was so lonely before you came," admitted. "I thought I would spend my life alone, replaced by my brother, forgotten." "I understand loneliness," said. "I've spent years being Earth's representative, always on display, never quite belonging anywhere. And now I'm still on display," he said with a slight smile, "but I'm not alone anymore." Moved closer to him. "Neither am I." They began trying for the child that was the whole purpose of their marriage, but weeks passed with no success. Ran test after test, growing more frustrated. "I don't understand," she told them. "The genetic compatibility is perfect. This should work." "Maybe it's stress," suggested. "This hasn't exactly been a relaxed situation." But was beginning to suspect something else. She reviewed her data again and again, looking for what she had missed. Then, late one night, she found it. "It's not just genetics," she told them the next morning. "The compatibility requires a specific hormonal response, and that response only activates under certain emotional conditions." "What conditions?" asked. "Looked uncomfortable. Genuine affection, real emotional bonding. Your bodies literally need to recognize that you care for each other before conception can occur." And looked at each other. They had started this as a political arrangement. Somewhere along the way, it had become something more, but neither had said it out loud. "Well," said slowly, "that's not going to be a problem." "It's not?" asked hope in her voice. "No," he took her hand, "because I've fallen in love with you." Slight blazed bright. "I love you too." That night they went stargazing on the palace roof. It was something had suggested, a human tradition he wanted to share. Could see more spectra of light than humans could, and she described the colors that were invisible to him. He told her the stories behind the constellations, myths from Earth's history. As they lay there, looking up at the stars together, something shifted. The bond between them deepened. Could suddenly see the stars the way did. He could perceive the color she described. Their different ways of seeing merged into something new and beautiful. 3 weeks later confirmed what they already suspected, was pregnant. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The impossible had happened. A human and were going to have a child. The pregnancy became the most studied event in galactic history. Scientists from every species wanted to understand how human and genetics could combine. Its discovery had opened up possibilities no one had imagined. "It's not just explained to and during one of their medical checkups. We're getting reports from across the Alliance. Other species with reproductive problems are requesting research into human compatibility. You two might have just solved a crisis affecting dozens of civilizations." "That's a lot of pressure," said, watching the monitor that showed the growing life inside. "Pressure you're both handling beautifully," assured them. "The baby is developing perfectly, a true hybrid of both species." But not everyone was celebrating. High Chancellor had grown more vocal in his opposition. He appeared on news programs, spreading doubts and fears. "This child will be neither human nor," he declared on one broadcast. "It will be a creature without a true people, without a true home. Is this what we want for our empire's future?" His words found an audience among the conservative factions. Protests erupted in some cities. There were calls for the pregnancy to be terminated, for the marriage to be annulled, for humans to be expelled from space. "Ignore them," told when he watched the news with a worried expression. "They're afraid of change. They always have been." But the protests were only the surface of a deeper problem. Investigation into the wedding attack had uncovered disturbing connections. The extremists had received funding and support from someone high in the government. The trail led closer and closer to High Chancellor. "I need more time," told privately. "I know he's involved, but I need proof that will convince the Emperor." "Be careful," warned, "if realizes you're investigating him." "I'm always careful." The pregnancy reached its midpoint without incident. Then, suddenly, everything went wrong. Collapsed during a routine public appearance. Caught her before she hit the ground, feeling her light flickering weakly. Doctors rushed her to the medical wing while paced outside, terrified. Emerged after 2 hours, her face grave. "The hybrid biology is more complicated than we thought. The baby is growing too fast, consuming too much of energy. If we don't stabilize her, we could lose them both." "What do we need to do?" demanded. "She needs a transfusion, but not just any transfusion. She needs both energy and human genetic material working together to support the pregnancy." "Take mine," said immediately. "It won't be enough. The baby needs more than one donor can provide." Within hours, the news spread. The princess and her unborn child were in danger. The response shocked everyone, especially High Chancellor. Humans from across the galaxy volunteered to help. Not just the human delegation but humans from every corner of the Alliance. Ships arrived carrying volunteers willing to donate whatever was needed to save and the baby. "There are over 300 humans outside the palace," reported. "All of them want to help." Even more surprising, citizens began arriving too. Regular people who had been moved by the love story between their princess and the human captain. They offered their light, their energy, their support. The medical procedure took 6 hours. Sat beside, holding her hand while coordinated the donors. One by one, humans and gave what they could. Their combined efforts created a stabilizing field around and the baby. High Chancellor watched from the observation deck, his expression unreadable. Beside him, his aide whispered urgently. "This changes nothing," said coldly. "Continue with the plan." But someone else was listening. One of his agents had managed to place a recording device near the Chancellor. Every word was captured. When finally woke, the first thing she saw was relieved face. "We're okay," he told her, "both of you." "How?" she asked weakly. "Humans," he said with a slight smile. "Turns out we're pretty good at coming together to help people, even alien princesses." She squeezed his hand. "Not alien family." The recovery took 2 weeks. During that time, finished her investigation. She compiled evidence that shocked even her. High Chancellor had known about human genetic compatibility with for over 20 years. Research had been done decades ago, suppressed and hidden. He could have solved the reproductive crisis a generation ago, explained to the Emperor. Instead, he buried the research because he couldn't stand the idea of humans being important to society. The Emperor's light burned with cold fury. How many families could have had children if this research had been shared? "Hundreds, Your Majesty, maybe thousands." Was brought before the imperial court. The evidence was presented. His face remained proud and defiant. "I did what was necessary to protect purity," he declared. "Humans are a young species, barbaric and short-lived. They don't deserve to be part of our bloodlines. Yet a human saved my daughter's life, the Emperor said quietly. Human donors saved my grandchild. Humans offered help freely, asking for nothing in return. Tell me, Chancellor, who is barbaric here? Stood to speak, her pregnancy now visible. The entire court watched as she addressed. You nearly destroyed me with your prejudice, she said. You took away hope from countless families. You tried to kill me and my husband. By all rights, I should hate you. She paused. But my husband has taught me that anger and bitterness only create more pain. You will face justice for your crimes, but I won't let hatred rule my heart or my empire. The mercy in her words moved many in the court, was stripped of his position and exiled. His co-conspirators were removed from power. The hidden research was released to the public. 2 months later, went into labor. The birth was difficult, the hybrid biology creating complications that tested skills. But after 12 hours, a baby's cry filled the medical wing. Held his daughter for the first time, tears streaming down his face. She was perfect, tiny and glowing with soft light, her eyes shifting between human brown and silver. What should we name her? He asked. Said softly. It means flower in Korean and unity in. She's the bridge between our peoples. Repeated, looking down at his daughter. Welcome to the universe, little one. Outside the medical wing, humans and celebrated together. The impossible child had been born, proof that different species could create something beautiful together. The galaxy would never be the same. 5 years passed like a dream. Princess ran through the palace gardens, her light trailing behind her like a comet's tail. She was chasing butterflies, the native kind that glowed in the dark. Her laughter echoed off the crystal walls, a sound that had become common in the palace since her birth. Slow down, called after her, but he was smiling. His daughter had inherited her mother's grace and his stubborn determination. She was fast. Appeared from another path, intercepting their daughter with practiced ease. Caught you, she said, scooping into her arms. Mama, did you see? I almost caught the blue one. Spoke in both Korean and switching between languages without thinking about it. I saw, you're getting faster every day. Joined them and they walked together as a family. It was a simple moment, but 5 years ago, it would have been impossible to imagine. Now it was just Tuesday. The empire had changed dramatically since birth. The release of hidden research had sparked a revolution. Dozens of citizens had paired with humans, and more hybrid children were being born every month. They called them these children who carried the light of 2 species. But the changes went far beyond the news of human genetic compatibility had spread across the Galactic Alliance. Species that had struggled with reproduction for generations were forming partnerships with humans. New programs were established, new families created. Humanity's status in the galaxy had transformed overnight. Who would have thought, often said, that our greatest contribution wouldn't be technology or warfare, but our ability to have children with everyone? The comment always made laugh, though there was truth in it. Humans had gone from being the new, primitive species to essential pillars of galactic society, all because they could adapt, connect, and love across any boundary. Had been named Prince Consort when became Empress 2 years ago. Her father had abdicated peacefully, confident that his daughter would lead the empire into a new era. And she had. The empire under Empress was more open, more diverse, more accepting than it had been in thousands of years. Papa, tell me the story again, asked that evening, snuggled between her parents. Which story? Asked though he knew. How you and Mama met. Smiled. Your father has told you that story 100 times. But I like it, please. So told the story again. How he had been a nervous captain on a diplomatic mission. How a princess had cut her hand on crystal. How a doctor had made an impossible discovery. How duty had brought 2 people together, but love had made them stay. And then what happened? Asked even though she knew. Then we had you, said, kissing her daughter's forehead. The most amazing thing in the universe. Later, After was asleep and stood on their balcony, looking out at the city. The lights have stretched to the horizon, beautiful and eternal. Do you ever miss Earth? Asked quietly. Sometimes, admitted. I miss Seoul in the spring, I miss Korean food, I miss my parents. He paused. But this is home now, you and our home. I never thought I could be this happy, said. That diagnosis 5 years ago felt like the end of everything. Now it seems like it was the beginning. Funny how that works. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching their world. Tomorrow would be formally presented as heir to the empire. It would be a historic ceremony, the first time a hybrid child was recognized as next in line for the throne. Representatives from across the galaxy would attend. But tonight was just for them. The presentation ceremony was magnificent. Thousands gathered in the grand hall while billions more watched across the galaxy. Stood beside her parents, wearing a dress that combined Korean and design. She was nervous but brave, her light steady and bright. When it was time, spoke to the assembled crowd. My daughter represents a future that seemed impossible just 5 years ago, she said. She is proof that our differences make us stronger, not weaker, that love can cross any divide, that the future belongs to those brave enough to embrace change. The crowd erupted in applause, humans and in dozens of other species, all celebrating together. After the ceremony, there was a reception. Doctor gave a speech that moved many to tears. I am a scientist, she said. I deal in facts and data, but standing here today, I see something that can't be measured in a laboratory. I see hope. I see families that wouldn't exist without the courage of two people who chose love over fear. Captain Park and Princess didn't just solve a medical problem. They showed us all what's possible when we open our hearts to those who are different from us. She paused, looking at and in the crowd. Humanity's greatest strength was never our technology or our ability to fight. It was always our ability to adapt, to connect, to love across all boundaries. We survived Earth because we learned to embrace diversity. Now we're sharing that gift with the galaxy, and the galaxy is better for it. The applause was thunderous. Later, much later, when the celebrations had ended and the guests had gone home, found himself back in the palace gardens. Was playing with other children, their different colored lights creating a rainbow in the darkness. Human and parents watched together, sharing stories and laughter. Commander joined him, now promoted to Admiral and Commander of Joint Human Security Forces. Not bad for a kid from Seoul, she said with a grin. Not bad for any of us, replied. Do you ever think about what would have happened if hadn't run that test, if the discovery had never been made? Watched his daughter play, her joy obvious and pure. All the time, but I try not to dwell on it. We're here now, that's what matters. Wise words, Your Highness, teased, using his formal title. Don't start with that. She laughed and walked away, leaving alone with his thoughts. Found him there a few minutes later. She didn't say anything, just stood beside him, their hands finding each other automatically. They had 2 more children now, a son and another daughter. The palace was always full of noise and light and love. What are you thinking about? Asked. Everything, said. Nothing. I was just remembering that first dinner when you cut your hand. If that hadn't happened, then wouldn't have run the test and we never would have discovered the compatibility and none of this would exist. Squeezed his hand. But it did happen. That's the universe we live in. Do you believe in fate? Asked. I believe in choice. We could have chosen fear and isolation. Instead, we chose hope and connection. That's not fate, that's bravery. Ran over to them, breathless and glowing. Mama, Papa, did you see? I can make 7 different colors now. Show us, said, and demonstrated, her light shifting through the spectrum in a way that only children could manage. Picked up his daughter, holding her close. 5 years ago, he had been a nervous diplomat trying to prove humanity belonged in the galaxy. Now he was a father, a husband, a prince. He had helped create a future where human and alien children played together under strange stars, where differences were celebrated instead of feared, where love truly did conquer all. "Tell me the story again," Papa said, settling into his arms. "Which one?" he asked, smiling. "How you and Mama met." And as the stars wheeled overhead, began the story once more. It all started with an impossible diagnosis and an unlikely human. The end.